leader of the 3rd Squad of the Shinsengumi.
Shizo Hijikata, assistant leader of the Shinsengumi. Okita, I recommend that you stand down. That man over there, the infamous Batosai, the master. People's wolves are here. It's the Shinsengumi.
What is up, guys? DT Ninja here for you guys my RuroKen Hokkaido Arc Chapter 51 review. Alright guys, we're going face off between Itakura and Kenshin at Goryokaku, where the prison, outside prison where Itakura was being held, has been destroyed, and he's basically standing on the remnants with this wooden structure. And Kenshin basically gives him this glare and says, I'm gonna beat you down and make you tell us where the hidden base of Kinkaku Heki is. And then you got this grin of Itakura, and he's like, yes, finally the rematch between us. But what's interesting about this is that Kenshin is not going to face him on his own. And so Nagakura reminds him, hey, you're not serious about taking him on your own, are you? Like, this isn't some match or duel that's going to be decided one-on-one. And then he goes on to say that these guys from Kinkaku Heki, that we faced this is like a battle that we had in the Bakumatsu. This is not some one-on-one duel. And then he says, keep all that fair and square talk and put it back in your loincloth. So Nagakura is the voice of reason here in this situation. And we've seen this time and time again. We saw it when he talked to Eiji and how he was, livid about Sojiro being in his presence and he was going to kill him with that, rifle, and basically he's like, that's not what a warrior do, that's not what a police officer would do. And then we see it again in Sapporo when Judo Abe was trying to basically take out the skull, and he's like, my comrades would be disgraced if I don't go out. And he's like, you got to remember, you have a family. This guy gave his life so that you could live on with your family. So he's always being the voice of reason. So I like that, and I like how it's portrayed in this chapter. Nagakura has a lot of wisdom. That's something I really like about that character. Now, not only does it make Kenshin snap back into his position of leader, because this is Kenshin and Saito's group, right? I mean, they're the leaders. They're the commanders in this. So yeah, it's interesting that Nagakura is like, the older one, and he's also wise, so he kind of gets him to snap back into his, position. The next thing I noticed, this is actually a 2-page cover, right? But look at the top. You got Nagakura, you got Ashitaro, you got Sojiro, you got Kenshin, you got Sano, you got Anji, you got Cho, you got Kamatari. All 8 of these characters are facing off against Doi, the rock user, Gongu, the large sword user, and Itakura Byakuya, as we know, is crazy powerful and their leader. So you got 8 on 3. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what comes after this. What happens when they say who's fighting with who is actually drawn right here. Okay, so you got Kenshin and Sojiro. We all know they're going to fight together. They're right next to each other to begin with. Then you got Sano and Anji. We know they're going to fight together because they pretty much said it in chapter 14. And then you got Cho and Kamatari. Of course they're going to fight together. They're Juppun Gatana. So again, they laid it out. The author laid it out for us. Who's going to fight with who? They're going to pair off with these people. So I found that pretty cool. And then you got Nagakura and Ashitaro. They're going to be together as a rear guard. So they give the orders, and that's what all this is. They basically talk about who's going to fight with who. So, yeah, and obviously Kenshin and Sojiro are going to fight. Nagakura and Ashitaro are going to fight. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. And obviously Cho and Kamatari. Okay, the next thing. Anji is the leader of the Juppun Gatana. We've known this for a little while, but it's refreshing to see. And not only that, he shares the same ideals as Kenshin now. So basically, Anji says, if it keeps both sides from needlessly killing each other, there's nothing better than that. So his ideals reflect Kenshin Himura's now. And also Nagakura Sugimura. Basically, they don't have any reason to kill someone anymore. So basically, all three of the leaders for Kenshin's group at this point, Nagakura kind of gives his orders to Henya, for example. And he's also been the voice of reason. So all three of these characters, they share the same ideals. So I found that interesting that the leadership have the same ideals. One interesting thing is that Kenshin tells Nagakura to stay back as the rear guard and protect others, and if they're injured or whatever. And then Nagakura is like, you know what? I'm pretty exhausted. I don't know how much help I'll be. So I like that. Even though he's a voice of reason, he tells it like it is. He's like, man, I'm tired. I gave it all in my last battle. I don't know how helpful I'm going to be. This is the next thing I want to point out. Okay, Kenshin gives this stare to Ashitaro. He's like, you're going to be with Nagakura. Do what he tells you. Do not, under any circumstances. And he's like, I know already. You don't have to tell me twice. So basically, he's giving him this death stare. Like, you cannot release that sword. You cannot give into the power of the Mugenjin. And so we all know this is foreshadowing of what's to come. Ashitaro is going to release the Mugenjin, most likely in the battle with the big sword guy. Because think about it, Cho and Kamatari are Jupungatana and have connection to Shishio, and Mugenjin is obviously Shishio's former sword. So I think Shishio's going to give a little talk to Ashitaro. We're going to get that. But I found that interesting that Kenshin kind of reminds him, and he's already, kind of back talking to him. So yeah. Then you get this visual of Itakura's group. The next thing I want to point out is Gongu. Gongu says something interesting. But before that, the rock user, Doi, he basically says that Amachi is not a fighter, Gongu, so you must protect him. You must protect him. He says, Omae ga shikato momorunda. You must protect him. This is something very interesting because later on we're going to see something really shocking when it comes to Amachi's character and Gongu as well. And he's like, yeah, you're such a caring mother, aren't you? And he says, Okan Dane. So right here, he's giving us a hint that this character is motherly. So again, another revelation later down the road in a couple chapters, you're going to see something. So I like how we're getting hints here early on. Of course, Doi gives some serious talk to Itakura. Itakura does not like that at all. What the hell? Who the hell do you think you're talking to? And of course, they have to apologize. Everybody's like, oh yeah, he's the leader. The next thing I notice is when Itakura is basically saying, show me your true selves. Drifters and warriors. So the interesting thing about this one is that when he says, reveal your true self, show me the most powerful view. Here, I think that maybe these words by Itakura indicate that some of his members are outsiders. And perhaps he could be talking about Kenshin being outsiders, but maybe he's actually giving some idea that some of his members are actually not from the original clan. So we know this guy, Itoi Isagawa, now, he is actually from Ryukyu, just like Usui was. So he's an outsider. And he's been said to be an outsider. So we know that. So perhaps this word is actually revealing that it is also in my group that are outsiders as well, drifters. So he gives this command and they go crazy. They smash the ground and they basically destroy the whole battlefield here, the landscape. You got Itakura smashing the ground and the whole the whole like looks like the surrounding kind of fences and everything surrounding this prison is completely destroyed now. Pretty awesome display of power. And of course you got Nagakura protecting Ashitaro here. Get back, always. And then, of course, you got Kenshin basically saying they're coming, and you get this whole destruction with... look at this. Nagakura is basically like, get back, kid. This is not your... And then Show and Kamatari running away. That's great. Yeah. Pretty much destruction right here. And the fake Yamagata's like, what the hell have I gotten myself into? Alright guys, let's get to the battle scene here. We have Sanosuke and Anji left after all this destruction. They're basically readying themselves to fight Doi, the rock user. Now, of course, Sanosuke goes on to talk about how these guys are weapons themselves, and he says, but you know what? We're fighting together. We'll be unstoppable. Anji basically is down to earth and says, no, he has the advantage. This is his terrain. We'll be defeated if you don't, do something that we get the advantage. And of course, Sanosuke doesn't like that. I like how Anji has this serious kind of outlook, and he's using strategy. I like this strategic kind of fighting that Anji's doing. Of course, Sanosuke smashes his fists together, says, we're going to show him a taste of our destruction. A little foreshadowing, yes. Then we get this, as he's snapping his, knuckles together, cracking his knuckles together, we get this blade coming up straight up. This is the blade of the rock user Doi. So this is a pretty powerful and strong blade. It's made from the earth. So this is one of the main weapons of him. But notice, right below where his foot is, you see these rocks kind of breaking apart. And you see something right here and here. This is Doi about to attack Sanosuke. And you can see blood gushing out right here. So he basically slashes him in the foot. And so he's, obviously confused. And then that's where he takes the time to surprise attack him, slices him in right in the back. And we see this arm come up pretty crazy. You get this full look at the blade. Looks like minerals, looks like rock, stone, earth, all created in one. It's also interesting to note that you have these bandages wrapped around them. I don't know if that's kind of symbolic of, the battle between him and Sanosuke and Anji, because we all know they all have bandages, right? You got Anji who has bandages, you got Sanosuke who has bandages both in his arms and his body. So I found that visual interesting as well. I don't know if that's meant to be like that or not, but maybe that's just to keep it in place. I'm not sure. But sometimes it has kind of that visual, kind of symbolic feel to it. So anyway, Sanosuke jumps backward. Anji says, no, stop. He's reading us because we're moving. So Anji has this strategic method of figuring out where the enemy is by picking up a rock, throwing it, and hitting the weapon. He uses his new blade, obviously, the Vajra blade, and he uses Rikushin, which is his Futai no Kiwami underneath the ground, and he tries to reach the opponent. I think he does hit him, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. So he's able to figure out how kind of his ability works, but he's still shocked at how strong he is. He's able to deflect the shockwave, or the effect of it. So while Doi is, tunneling underground, Anji and Doi have these strategic means of fighting. While observing Anji trying to bring the rock user to the surface, Sano comes up with his own brilliant strategy to bring him up, and that is berating and insulting. You son of a bitch. How dare you call yourself an Ikitozen? You're one of the Kinkaku Heki, right? So he comes right to the surface. It works perfectly. So that was pretty nice. I mean, that was an interesting strategy. Just yell at the enemy. But yeah, he's right. He's kind of a coward. Sanosuke is right there. Obviously, Doi, you can just see in mass. He's pretty big. You can see his blade here right behind him. So, obviously, the shock of both of them. And he's like, well, I'm here. What now? And he's like, why don't you sink to the bottom of the earth, you insolent? And this is where he's going to attack. They're both going to attack with powers. So here, he's going to attack with his technique, Futai no Kiwami. Yes, Futai no Kiwami meets Rock, Hammer, Arm. So this is his other weapon that he creates. So right off the bat, we can tell Doi can create weapons from the earth at will. So he already has this blade in his other hand, right? That's a pretty big blade, by the way. And then out of nowhere, he creates this earth from the earth, from the dirt, from the sand, from whatever, and he creates this weapon called Rock, Hammer, Arm, and he attacks, and they both clash. We can see Futai no Kiwami shattering the weapon that he has, but it doesn't do any damage to him. You can just see it breaks the top of the weapon. So that's pretty cool visual there, but this reveals that he's able to block Futai no Kiwami. So he attacks Sanosuke. Anji comes to the conclusion that crap, the Futai no Kiwami, he created a weapon from nothing and then deflected the force from it. And yeah, he's really powerful. So the final part shows Doi in full. We see the top of his head with the spiky rocks here. You see you see his kind of his weapon here, his sharp weapon. And then of course at the bottom you can see that it says his battle style is called Graboids. Graboids. So Graboids is actually a creature, I've looked this up, in a franchise called Tremors. So I think the author was actually going for that. So it's like a worm-like creature that, you know, kind of tunnels underground and attacks like a monster. So I think that's the motif he's going for. But not only is Graboids kind of a reference to this franchise Tremors, but the appearance itself, the spiky rock face kind of motif, this actually goes back to Doi and his character, like the Japanese characters, the kanji. Doi itself literally means earth, and he even looks like kind of a dragon in the back, right? He's got the spikes coming down his back. So that's a pretty cool visual to end with. I like this chapter. I like the strategic parts, both Sanosuke, both the enemy, and Anji as well. So we got a little setup of what's to come. But anyways, guys, I will have some discussion questions coming in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and yep, that's pretty much it for now. We'll see you in the next one.